様、何者じゃ。
我は剣を極めし者なり。
全ては動き出した。もう誰も止めることはできない。
貴様があの時母を殺した。貴様をこれで終わらせる。
Right, we're back into playing Tekken.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7, Katarina Alves.
First match for tonight.
Get ready for the next battle.
Desculpa, mas você vai ter que...
Round 1. Fight. Round 2. Fight.
Yeah.
Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Get ready for the next battle.
Yo, what's up? I sense how. What's up, Comboles? How are you doing today? Welcome to the stream, man. I sense how. I'm fine. I was playing Call of Duty before I got into Tekken, and I was playing Diablo 3 this morning. Yo, what's up, Ravanin? Welcome to the stream.
Yeah. Yeah. Ha. Yeah.
I'm fine, thank you so much. How about you? How you doing today, man?
Challenger.
I didn't realize I'm already a red rank yesterday. Because I wasn't paying attention to the rank. Yeah. Thanks. I'm still not quite sure if I'm ready for that rank already. You know my game already. You've already figured me out by how I play Katarina.
Round 1. Fight.
Oh, it's so scary.
KO.
I'm still trying to find a variety of attacks. Ooh la la. Miguel is so scary.
KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Get ready for the next battle.
Potato head.
Vamos lá. Eu vou chutar sua bunda até o inferno.
Round 1. Fight.
Of course, just send me an invite after this guy.
KO.
I'm curious how far you can get in. I'm not really sure. I don't think I'm quite ready for the higher ranks.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Just pop me an invite after this guy, bro.
You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Neither do I. I haven't really got into how to read frame data. It's what we call you just enjoy the game.
Eu vou chutar sua bunda.
I don't know the specs. I just enjoy the game.
Perfect. Round 2. Fight.
Hang on. Hang on. At least I've got an excuse.
Round 3.
If ever I lose, I don't know how to read frame data. Right.
You win.
Você está me dando sono.
I'm heading my way to Biako. How important is frame data to cat? Me. Would it change my playstyle if I read frame datas? Oh, I think we lost the map. I think I got error. How do I invite you again? Invite. Why can't I invite you? I can only invite you to watch. Hey, Comboless, I can't invite you to play, although I can invite you to watch. Remote play together. What's a remote? Oh, okay. Okay, let me just join you instead. But yeah, when you face opponents that blocks your lows and know how much your moves are unblocked, they will punishing you like that snake edge that she has. If you can block it, it's launch punishment. Yeah, of course I know.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist Tournament 7, Katarina Alves.
That is why
Get ready for the next battle.
I'd be much willing to face a stronger opponent than just care with my ranks, because the more I get to the more exposure I get to see his gameplay, the more I can adjust. That's the reason why I don't really care about ranks.
Fight.
Here you go. Oh, what the heck?
KO. Round.
That lamp bothers me.
Fight.
Here we go. Oop.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Yeah.
Oh.
KO.
Yeah.
Round 4. Fight.
Nice.
Great. Final round. Fight.
Oh, I missed.
You win.
Yeah,
Vocês estão me
his
dando
hit.
sono.
His hit effect gives you epilepsy. That's maybe just because you don't have much experience about Katarina. That's why. You probably have less exposure to Katarina at the moment. That's why. Well, most of my
Vamos lá.
my gameplay just
Tá sua bunda.
Round one.
it's just a repetitive, so
Fight.
you'll probably just can figure it out soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, what?
Great. Round two. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh crap, I'm dead.
KO.
Yeah, I can count how many cat I come across.
Round
Yeah,
three.
that's probably the reason.
Fight.
Because not too many users of cat nowadays.
KO. Round four. Fight.
That hurts. Oh, what?
KO. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Like how many cat? I mean, even I rarely encounter cat during match. I mean, online match. Mostly encounter like the Mishimas. There are lots of Mishima players, including Dragonov and Akuma. Yeah, those are the usual online matches that I do encounter.
Round one. Fight.
And well, yeah, Hawarang.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why did I not block down?
Yeah. Yeah.
KO. Round two. Fight.
Yeah.
It's hard to penetrate that area.
KO. Round three. Fight.
That's mommy, Prince.
KO.
Sure, sure. Come back later.
Fight.
I always drop that combo. Yeah. Yeah? Give me. Give me. Ooh, error! What the heck? Yeah. We got disconnected. Oh, I think your game crashed. Yeah, I think his game crashed. She's got smiles back to me. Your stream has died? Huh? What?
Welcome to the King of Iron, Katarina Alves.
No, I'm still live.
Get ready for the next battle.
Yeah, I'm still live on the Twitch. Oh dear. Well, at least we're back.
Round one. Fight.
Yeah.
I can see you change your outfit.
Yeah. Yeah.
KO. Round two. Fight.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's more clean, you know.
KO.
That's more
Round
simple.
three.
I like that.
Fight.
Yeah.
Wrong move. Oh no! Is that guaranteed hit?
Fight.
While I'm still lying down? Oh. Oh, what?
Great.
That wasn't supposed to be a grab.
Você está me dando sono.
I hate it when I go back forward and then instead of doing the thing, it just grab. The delays have it. It wasn't supposed to be a grab, but instead it grabs it herself.
Get ready for the next battle.
Where's my coffee? And where's my cookie? And where's my... Where's my bread? Otherwise I'm gonna eat your donut. Thank you.
Deixa eu te testar pra
Oh,
ver se você
is
luta
was
de
that a
verdade.
guaranteed hit? That wasn't fair.
Fight.
Yeah.
Ah.
KO.
No, you can't hit that.
Round 2. Fight.
Damn it. Ah, crap.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Yeah.
Ow! I'm dead!
KO.
I missed, I dropped
Round
it!
4. Fight.
Oh, what the heck happened?
KO. Final round. Fight.
That hurts. Another one.
KO. You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Yo, thanks for following Most Litas 6366. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for following, man.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight.
Oh, that was Indeed. A guaranteed hit.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Ah, I missed. That hurts. Look at those.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Nope. Ah, it's too slow.
Round 4. Fight.
Thank you.
KO.
Thank you.
Get ready for the next battle.
You've finally beaten me.
Deixa eu te ter.
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight.
That hurts. Ah, what? That hurts.
Round 3. Fight.
Nope.
KO. Round 4. Fight.
Why it's cut down?
KO. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Excuse me for eating. I'm just gonna have to take my coffee as well.
Get ready for the next battle.
Don't write me a mouth on your white shirt.
Can you give me donut? It's okay. I've got my bread.
Deixa eu te testar.
Round 1. Fight.
Yeah.
Round 2. Fight.
Ah. I always drop that combo, even if that's so simple.
KO. Round 3. Fight. KO. Round 4. Fight.
Ow!
KO. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Alright, no problem. Oh, no problem.
Welcome to
I
the
think
King
I'm
of
fine with
Iron Fist Tournament 7. Katarina Alves.
maps with walls already, because I think I've had a little bit of experience already and how to do wall combos already. Although it's not that damaging for Katarina, but yeah. I'll take my chances on the walls as well.
Round 1. Fight.
Why can't I do
KO. Round 2. Fight.
what? What are you doing?
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Welcome back, man. Ah, no! Why did I click?
You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Have you done your dinner? Welcome back, man.
Get ready for the next battle.
I'm just eating croissant. Coffee and croissant. The old butter croissant. Croissants. Go nuts with her. I mean him.
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2.
I'm not gonna let you do a perfect. Maybe this time. The side step. Why did I kick?
KO.
Look at those face.
Round 3. Fight.
Why did I move? What?
KO. Round 4. Fight.
Oh, look. Huh? Didn't reach the wall.
KO. Final round. Fight. You win.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Get ready for the next battle.
Oh, you get the messages. No, offline, but well, attempts made. I'm going to mode. Okay. Sorry, Comboles, I haven't read all your messages because it was on the Steam. I was just checking on the Twitch.
Round 1. Fight.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I knew it.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ah no.
KO.
Didn't reach.
Round
Too
3.
small forward.
Fight. Perfect.
Yeah.
Round 4. Fight.
Yeah.
Too slow.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Great.
벌써 끝이야? 더 던져봐.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight.
Why don't...
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Why did I move? No! That was so hard!
Round 3. Fight.
I bounce?
KO. Round 4.
Hey, Prince, no!
Fight.
I jump.
You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Parry. Hey, Prince, no.
Get ready for the next battle.
The only thing that's why I hate when I encounter an opponent that just keep on waiting and waiting,
Round 1.
because I'm not gonna be able to do the parry. Holy moly!
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Ow! Nope. Bad habit. Bad habit.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Nah. What am I doing?
KO. Round 4. Fight.
What? Sidestep?
KO. Final round.
Did the tracking?
Fight.
Nope. Nope.
Perfect.
There goes the 5 golden letter.
벌써
You
끝이야? 더
lose.
덤벼봐.
Seven.
Get ready for the next battle.
Why do I keep saying 5 letters? Why do I keep saying 5 golden letters? Where do I get the 5? Where did I get the 5 letters?
Round 1. Fight. KO. Round 2. Fight.
Missed again. What the heck? I'm dead.
KO.
I almost missed that combo.
Round 3. Fight. Perfect. Final round. Fight. Perfect. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Sure. Sure, you may. You may.
Get ready for the next battle.
Hey, Combolith. Ravanin wanted to join. Let's invite him after this match. Think you can invite him, right? We'll invite after this game. All right.
Round 1. Fight.
Nope.
KO. Round 2. Fight. KO. Round 3. Fight.
Oh, what the heck? Ah! I pressed the wrong button.
Você tem técnica, mas não tem alma.
Right, let's return to the lobby. And then invite Ravanin. Oh, who's this? Arfan. There's a guy. Who is this? Is that Ravanin, right? Nope. Okay. I thought it was your new account. So how oh, you're the only one who can invite, right? Or can I invite? Nope. Yep. Right. All right, let's go. I think Slyax has already gone to bed because it was a bit early.
Welcome to the King of Iron Fist, Katarina Alves.
Okay, I'm gonna close your stream so that my game doesn't crash. No problem.
Get ready for the the next battle.
Vamos lá. Eu vou
Vamos
jogar.
lá. Oh no, that's a nice costume.
Fight.
Oh no! What happened?
KO. Round 2. Fight.
I thought.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
Yeah.
I thought you're gonna grab.
KO. You win.
Você está me dando sono.
Because when I tab out of the game to watch your stream, it's sometimes that happens. That happens as well. Do you have 16 gigs of memory? I mean RAM?
Katarina Alves.
I'm not sure if you can still hear that, but yeah.
Get ready for the next battle.
Ooh la la, Leo.
Vamos lá.
Oh, that's a nice costume. You got lots of costume.
Round 1. Fight.
That was pretty neat. Look at those damage. Ah, legs.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Okay. That bounce. Ah.
KO.
Why so laggy?
Round 3. Fight.
Oh no.
Perfect.
Dropped it.
Round 4. Fight.
What? What the heck? What's going on?
KO. Final round. Fight.
What the heck? It's so lagging. No, I can't.
KO. You lose.
Oh well. At least I can watch, right? Can I watch? At least? Oh, there you go. That's nice.
Get ready for the next battle. Round 1. Fight.
That hurts.
Round 2. Fight.
He's a Hawarang player as well. Just in case you forgot.
KO. Round 3. Fight.
That hurts.
KO. Round 4. Fight. KO. Final round. Fight.
That was lots of kicks. And Haorang wins.
You win.
필살기 같은 건 없어.
Guess it's my turn again. That's a good rotation. That's a good rotation.
Welcome to the King of Iron, Katarina Alves. Get ready for the next battle.
My battery's running out. If I don't post on time, then I'm gonna lose all my followers, but I'm irrelevant. Hashtag. Long time, Hannah. No, this is where we came from, right? No, we need to go this way.
Round
All right,
one.
here we go.
Fight.
Oh, hello.
KO. Round two. Fight.
Hey, no.
KO. Round three. Fight.
That was faster. Oh no!
KO.
I missed.
Round four. Fight.
Why am I stopping? This guy's. Ah!
KO.
Corre de volta pra sua mamãe.
Welcome to the King of Iron, Katarina Alves. Get ready for the next battle.
Haorang. Haorang. Oh, Leo. Okay. Combo damage S.
Round
Oh man,
one.
I hate this stage.
Fight.
Oh no! So dark.
KO. Round 2. Fight.
Yeah.
What? No. Ah. Oh, so laggy. It's so laggy. Oh, crap. Oh, man. And it's sinking. I think we got disconnected. I think your bars went to 2 bars against mine. I think you dropped your bars, Ravanin. Oh, I think it crashed. Yeah, I guess.
Welcome to the King of Katarina Alves.
I think his game crashed. That is why we're so laggy.
Get ready for the next battle.
Oh.
Vamos lá. Eu vou
Vamos
jogar
lá.
essa bunda até o
I
inferno.
think your game crashed.
Round 1.
Yeah.
Fight.
Yeah, I think your game crashed, bro.
KO.
Game is. Oh, what happened?
Round 2. Fight.
Yeah, because I saw that your bar went to 2 bars. It was like from 4 bars, it went down to 2 bars.
KO.
That is why we were so laggy at the first match.
Fight.
Can't even control properly. Yeah, you're right.
Round 4.
Yeah, it is.
Fight.
It wasn't that. It wasn't that before, right? It wasn't like that. Yeah, what happened? Oh crap. Keep dropping the combos anymore. What happened?
KO.
Yeah, it's probably. Oops.
Fight.
What the heck am I doing?
KO.
Doesn't respond to forward.
You lose.
Yeah, I think there's a problem with the connection right now. I mean, even with comboless, it's not that smooth like the other days. Yo, comboless. Yeah, probably that's the Steam. Because even with comboless, he's got 4 bars, but we're still not having the smooth gameplay. Yeah, probably it is. But you're still not here. Ah, that is weird. It is. It's probably the Steam, bro. We were doing fine like the other days, and then right now it's not stable. Yeah, hang on. Let me just invite you both instead. Invite to lobby. Invite to lobby. Hang on, I haven't created a lobby yet. What am I doing? Hang on, let me invite you too. Oh, what happened? Or probably the game itself after the update? Because I can't create a lobby right now. Hang on, let me just restart the game. I think it's the game, not the Steam.
What's that? Steam was unable to sync on your current phone.
Okay. Yeah, I had to restart mine as well because I think it was a game. It's not the Steam.
What?
Yeah, it's definitely the game, bro. Can't even click on the play. And that's what happens after the update. Steam was unable to sync with your what the heck? Nah, it's not the okay. Right. If you launch this application from another computer, you setting here blah blah. Right. whatever. Yeah. Because when my son restarted his game, he also have that message wherein the game wasn't synced with the cloud. So that's why probably. Yeah, me too. Me too. Ah, that's a bummer. That's a bummer. Hang on, let me just try it again. They could probably be doing something for the Black Friday, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it's offline. Tekken is offline. Look at this. It is offline. Mine can't do it. Can't go online. So yeah. Can you see this? It can't. I can't go online. Yeah, it is. It is. There's going to be a. There's going to be probably a maintenance or something, because I can't even go online. Too bad. That is why we were so laggy that I can't even do the combos. I can't even properly do the combos. I keep dropping them. They should have it in their page if they're updated. Second. Right, I'm just gonna restart my PC as well, but I'm gonna have to end the stream. I think the Steam network is offline. It's not the Tekken. Yeah, it is the Steam. Is there something? It is the Steam, bro. Yep. This is for everyone. I'm gonna have to look at that. Privacy, like. Steam. Yeah. There are lots of reports that they've also experienced down on their Steam. Like right now, it's already 617 reports. Steam is down, bro. Apparently, we can't do anything about it until we're gonna have to wait for them. As per down detector, it's down. Steam status Twitter. Yep, it's on Twitter as well. Yeah.
I say we're gonna go sport.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As an egg? Yeah. Yeah, good job. High five course. Hey, look, man. Look at this. Look at his status here. How do I? Look at this status right here. Can you see that? Oh, it's too much. Steam is down, so I've been talking to my wife. She seems not.
Shut up. Daddy, shut up. Shut up, Daddy.
Right. Guy, come here. Come here. Look.
Steve is down, so I've been talking to my wife. So
Steam is offline. Steam is down.
why didn't you more?
So since the Steam is down, he was able to talk to his wife. Apparently, she seems nice.
Whatever. The whole time, okay, nagatagot yung
Yeah. People those days. It is a real MVP. Well, I guess so.
You're not learning that in school?
That is so funny. Come on, guys, get it together. Where is that? I have to retweet though. Where was that? Steam is down. I have to retweet. Where is it? Where is it? Where was it? That guy was so funny. Damn it, I can't. How do I use Twitter? How do I use Twitter? Can I at least see where I replied or something? Nope. I had to. Steam is down. How can I find him? How can I find him? Me, I do have an account in Twitter, but I don't usually use it.
Daddy,
Yeah?
this is a new ball.
Yeah.
Daddy, this is a present for you.
Let me
And
catch.
open it. There's something inside.
Why so hard? What is it?
Surprise!
It's just a...
All for you.
Hey, careful.
I didn't hide
I really can't find him anymore. It was... Steam is down. Probably... his wife killed him or something? Oh, here. I'm gonna have to... How do I retweet this? This one? Set... to... What? Copy to... Oh, this one? What's this? Oh, here, yeah. Mm. I think I've already replied to these. How do I... Damn it, I can't... I don't know how to use Twitter. What the heck? How can I see the comments from the other people? It says 10, but I can't see them. Nope. I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to screenshot this and copy them on Facebook as well. The thing is, we don't know how long it will take. That sucks. Yeah, it is. I'm probably just going to grab dinner instead, probably. I'm gonna have to stare at his tweet for a couple more minutes just to see if he changed it or not. Should be here. It should be around here. There. Whew. Once again, Steam is down, so I've been talking to my wife. She seems nice. So yeah, I think that's it for Tekken for tonight. Let me just... Yeah, I'm probably just gonna stream Call of Duty instead. Alright. Thanks for the match for tonight, Ravanin and Comboles. And that's it for Tekken for tonight. And yeah, we're gonna reschedule our match. I've still got a lot to learn from Leo and Hawarang. Right. See you soon, guys. And that's it for the Tekken stream. And bye. Since the Steam is down. See ya.